How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about this whole cheat by mail scam that some of these governors across the nation are trying to run. Now, before we get deep into it, I got to back up a little bit here and tell you why it's a story. A lot of states all over the nation are trying to basically have the general election in November where you vote for the president at home. They may not come out and say it, but that's what they really want to do. And there could be a few reasons for this. They'll say it's because of the virus, everybody's trying to be safe. But by November, I mean, come on, the shutdown will probably be over any day now. Like where I live, the shutdown is over. We're done, back to normal life. The only thing that's kind of shut down a little bit are the restaurants. You have social distancing happening inside the restaurant. Some tables are blocked off, but beyond that, we're back to normal. School will be back in session. College will be back in session. Everything will be back on deck come the fall. There could be a quote unquote resurgence of the virus because, like Fauci was saying earlier in the year, the Southern Hemisphere is going into their cold season and they're going to have some uptick in cases. I think Brazil's dealing with it right now. Parts of Africa are dealing with it right now, but mostly Brazil from what I've been reading. So if they're able to travel up here and bring the virus with them, and if people that have the virus still here in the United States are able to spread it and we have another outbreak, there could be some more shutdowns happening in the fall. You may have some really ambitious governors that try and keep the shutdown all the way throughout the fall, which would be really hard, if not impossible. But that's a different story. Now move on. My whole point is that maybe they're trying to have the elections at home so you won't be in a crowded place. It'll be for your own safety, all this, that, and the third. And then it'll be more convenient for you. It'll be easier for you to vote from home. You won't have to go out. You won't have to spend money on gas or get a ride or walk or do nothing like that. Then the Secretary of State in Michigan sent a bunch of applications out. And I think the administration thought that she was sending ballots, but all she sent was applications. But when those went out, Trump was like, hey, if we have this cheat by mail scam, you may lose some federal funding. Meaning if you just give out these absentee ballots to everybody that asks for one with no real reason, with no real excuse, like in the case of Donald Trump, he lives in Florida, actually, as far as his written address, but he's in Washington, D.C. as a president. Therefore, you have to cast an absentee ballot. If you're in the military and you're overseas or stationed somewhere else, you could file an absentee ballot. If you're sick or you're infirmed, if you have a legitimate reason to file an absentee ballot, okay, that makes sense. But the ballots should not go out to everybody just for no reason. Just to say, okay, I want an absentee ballot and you get one. Because it's easy to commit fraud in situations like this. Very easy. In a lot of these states that are trying to get the cheat in the mail, vote from home, whatever you want to call it, thing going on, there's no ID required. So if you don't require an ID and I can vote in the mail, how do you really know who I am? When I go to the ballot in person, you don't know who I am. But you have no idea who I am when I vote from home. I can make up a name, give you a false address, vote that way. I can vote multiple times under different names. I can give you a dead person's name and vote up under that. There's a lot of different ways you can cheat the system if no ID is required and if you're voting from home. If people in my house are voters, but I'm the only actual voter, I can get everybody's ballot, fill in whoever I want to fill in, and then send it back. But I couldn't do that if I were in person. That's just not really a real thing that can happen. And it's weird seeing the left talk about, oh, this is a dog whistle, this is racist, you're trying to suppress the vote, you're trying to keep black folks from voting, just weird stuff. It's weird seeing them say that because didn't we spend like 3 years and $40 million talking about Russia this, Russia that, Russia's involvement in the 2016 presidential election? Wasn't that the whole thing we were concerned about back then? The integrity of the election, outside forces tampering with the election, and don't get it confused. There are plenty of foreign nationals here that will have no problem tampering with the election, and it'll be made easier if you can vote from home. Very easy for them to come over here and directly tamper in our elections. All right. But that's a different story, and I move on. My whole point is this. I thought the left were really about trying to uphold the integrity of the election. So why wouldn't they want that extra layer of security to make sure that the elections are good and that there's no outside interference? It's the same thing with the voter ID law. Why don't you want voter ID? Don't you want everyone's vote to be protected? Okay. If I come in and vote as John Smith, Although my name is not John Smith because I have no idea I'm able to do it. What happens when John Smith comes in and is like, hey, where's my ballot? Where, I can't vote. Oh, no, you already voted, sir. Oh, no, that wasn't me. No, you already voted. It says it right here. If you were to check ID, you'd be able to protect that. ID is needed for every walk of life. The main thing I keep hearing is about the minority. That's always this, because always kind of the go-to with the left, right? Oh, the minorities, they can't get an ID. I've had an ID since I've been old enough to be able to drive, old enough to work. Really, I had an ID when I was in elementary school. Had a little card to give you in school. Like, I've always had an ID card. Always. It's not a difficult thing to be able to acquire. You got to have ID for everyday walking life. Okay, if you're on welfare, benefits, food stamp, WIC, EBT, TANF, etc., you got to be able to show that ID card and your birth certificate, social security number, the whole 9 yards. You got to show all of that to get a lot of these benefits. You go to the hospital. Anything you do, you got to have your ID. Got to have a license to drive. You got to have it to do basically everything. Even if you don't drive, even if you are infirmed, how are you getting any kind of government benefits? You got to have the ID. So why can't you use that same ID to go out there and vote? And like I said, if you are an infirm person, you cannot leave your house for whatever the reason may be, that will be a valid excuse to be able to vote from home. But it's got to be proven. You can't just say, I'm 1,000 pounds, I can't leave. Meanwhile, you voting 5 and 6 times in the same election. You can't do that. All right. But I move on. The point that I'm making is ID cards are not hard to come by, and it shouldn't be a thing that's frowned upon to require to vote. You should be able to have an ID, go vote. Have a reason why you got to stay home and cast a ballot that way and vote. That's all that I'm saying. But like I say, the left don't like that too much. They really want to just be able to engage in fraud. People say, oh, ABL, there's no evidence of voter fraud, of election fraud. You're just fear mongering, all this and that and the third. First of all, like I was just talking about, we spent 3 years and $40 million on a case of alleged election fraud when you're talking about the Russia scandal. All right. So if I'm paranoid, at least I didn't spend years of my life and millions of dollars to figure out a thing to be true or false. We have had instances in America of people getting locked up over the voting, or just improprieties, things that make you go, Remember back in, what it might have been, 2004, with Jeb Bush in Florida and George W. with some of the votes just out on the highway, flying in the wind, all kind of things like that were going on. Florida was really, really funny back then. What happened? How did that really go on? Was there voter fraud? Was there election fraud happening there? I'm not saying it was or it wasn't. I'm just saying, let's talk about it. There have been people that have been arrested. I think there was a Democrat in Pennsylvania, it might have been in Philly, that was stuffing ballots, got locked up for that. People that cannot vote, people that don't have voting rights trying to vote, getting locked up for that. There's a whole lot of voting fraud going on, and it's easier to shield it when you don't have any kind of ID. How can you really discover when voter fraud is happening? You got dead people voting, people that have the ability to vote and are alive but aren't voting themselves. How would you really know who is who? Like, a lot of people stay home and don't vote at all. Those people may still end up voting because of voter fraud. How can you really tell how much voter fraud is out there? We do know it's some, but you don't know quite to the extent that it exists. It doesn't really matter what the extent is. All that matters is that it does exist, and we should take measures to be able to stamp it out. I would think the left would be proud of Trump taking steps to eliminate voter and election fraud, but I guess I'm wrong. And I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? Do you think that voter fraud is a thing? Election fraud, is it a thing? And that's your viewpoint. Let me know why in the comments below. Or is voter fraud not really real? Is election fraud not really real? If that's your viewpoint, let me know why in the comments below. If it's not real, then why are folks getting locked up for it every single year without fail? If it's not real, then explain 2016. All them coin tosses went in favor of Hillary Clinton during the primary. Okay, a lot of things were happening kind of fishy around that. People coming up injured, dead, everything else. I'm not saying who did what or any kind of conspiracy that I'm trying to validate. I'm just asking some questions. Things seem kind of weird. If you care about the election, if you want everyone's vote to count, then you should be in favor of protecting it. Voter ID laws and minimal mail-in ballots. Like I said, if you want to have a mail-in ballot, there should be a valid reason. You're in the military, your work calls for it, you're infirmed, and you should be able to prove that reason. It should not be given out to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. We're not going to have a Zoom call for our elections. We're not going to do that. We're going to go out, 80 to 90, 95% of us are going to go out in person and vote the normal way. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.